Hello, sisters, and welcome to Go Solo Live. This is Jennifer Buchholz with Transform Via Travel. It's time to sit back and grab a cup of coffee and enjoy my conversation with Rebecca Thompson as she shares about her trip to Aruba and her exciting upcoming year doing remote year.
Welcome to Go Solo Live.
Don't you mean go solo live? Have you ever been asked, why on earth would you travel alone? Go Solo Live not only answers that question, but celebrates life as a midlife solo traveler. This is a safe place for women to come together to reminisce about their travels, encourage others to travel, and to dig into the real lessons learned from these journeys. Now join Jennifer Buchholz with Transform Via Travel as she and her guests share stories of the solo travelers of midlife women.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Go Solo Live. This is Jennifer Buchholz with Transform Via Travel. And today we have Rebecca Thompson joining us to share her solo travel experiences. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in. But before we get into the who, what, where, when, and why, I want to know a little bit about where were you at in your life when you decided it was time to take this solo trip?
So the last few months have actually been so transformative, and travel has always been something I've loved to do. I say I've suffered from Wanderlust for as long as I can remember. And for the last 3 years, I'd been in a relationship, and we would travel together, but there was always, compromising on where we went, or family vacations instead of couples vacations. And so we broke up in September, October. And over Thanksgiving, it was my first Thanksgiving alone for the first time in 3 years. And I was reminded of how before I'd gotten in this relationship, I would spend my holidays traveling. And so in 2012, my girlfriend and I went to the Dominican Republic over Thanksgiving. In 2013, we went to Paris over Christmas and London for New Year's. And here I was sitting at home by myself on Thanksgiving, and I was just like, never again. And I'm tired of waiting for friends to get their stuff together or get their money together, or waiting until I have a partner. So my Christmas gift to myself this Christmas was a solo vacation to Aruba. And I purposely planned the trip over New Year's because I felt like, there was going to be a lot of big change coming up in my life in 2017. And it was really going to be a solo journey. And so I thought, well, what better way to sort of start to prepare for that journey than to go somewhere for the first time by myself. And it was better than I even imagined. So I'm really glad not only that I started the year with that experience, but that I just said yes to myself.
That's awesome. What do you think maybe was holding you back from saying yes to yourself in the past?
I always thought, when I was single, I was always looking for a relationship, Then when I was in a relationship, I always was like, man, I'm an introvert. I love being alone, And so I was always trying to be somewhere that I wasn't. And for the first time in a long time, and I recently started meditating and just like get into a practice where like I could just be present, And so this also was like, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I had 3 friends this year diagnosed with cancer. One of them, stage 4 cancer at 35. And so this notion of like, we're literally running out of time, And so I sort of felt like, what am I waiting for? So like, I need to be living the life of my dreams right now. And then I should also say I read Shonda Rhimes' book, The Year of Yes. And so I've been challenging myself to just say yes to things as they open up. And so, there were a series of other things that were happening in my life that I was saying yes to. And this was one of them.
That's amazing. So you said yes, you're doing it. Why Aruba?
So my first thought, in literally a week, I'm leaving to spend a year living around the world. So, which is in and of itself, it is really my wildest dream come true. So I knew that I had a year of travel ahead of me, and I was going to be traveling with a group of 75 people from around the world. I'm doing a program called Remote Year. And so I had about 80,000 frequent flyer miles that I knew I wasn't going to use, right? Because all this travel was already planned. So I thought, well, what is one place that I've never been that I've always wanted to go to? And originally I wanted to go to Hawaii. When I think about, warm tropical places to be over New Year's, it just seemed like the right place. I didn't have enough freaking flyer miles for them. So I think I needed about 100,000 miles to make that trip happen. And I just didn't want to pay the difference. So then I started thinking, okay, well, where else could you go? And so I started Googling top beaches in the world. And Aruba was on every list. I guess in the back of my mind, I'd always thought about visiting Aruba, but it always seemed too expensive or too extravagant. It just sort of felt out of reach. And so I started reimagining what it could look like to go. So I paid about $140 to make the miles work, right? And so at that point, I kept getting to the point where I was like, okay, maybe I can't go for 100% free, but if I can get a super cheap ticket, then I'm willing to do that. So the ticket was only $140. And then I said, well, I don't have to stay at a resort or a fancy hotel, so I'm going to stay at an Airbnb. Normally, I would just, rent out a house or something like that. But to save even more money, I said, I'm going to get a room in a house. And that really opened up Aruba as one of the best places to go because there were just so many options. And so I rented a studio apartment for the time that I was there. And it just worked out so magically that I knew that I was supposed to be in Aruba at that time.
Well, I can't wait to hear a little bit more about the magic, but I'm happy that, what I'm hearing from you is you knew you needed to go. You had some flexibility in destination. There was budget in mind, but you used your resources and you were open to the possibilities rather than saying, oh man, if I can't get to Hawaii, then why bother? You took that deep breath and let other possibilities emerge in. And now you're talking about the magic of Aruba. So bring us to that magic with you.
Yeah. So first of all, I should just say that the flight there was an amazing experience because I travel a lot. Just generally, I travel domestically for my job and, love to take international travel. But this really was the first solo trip in this way that I'd ever experienced before. And when you land in Aruba, you're literally flying over the beach. And so and it was, of course, winter in Michigan where I live. So just the idea that in a few hours, I could go from the dead of winter to 80-degree weather was amazing. My host was an amazing woman who really did create this experience for me in a way that I probably wouldn't have had if I went somewhere else. So she built 2 studio apartments on the back of her house and to one, create passive revenue for herself. But then she really started taking these folks who rented out the rooms and showing them around the island. So every day she would drive me to wherever I wanted to go. And I just pay her $20 a day, which for one cab, I'd probably pay that to just go one place. She, invited me to events. There were other American tourists who were there on solo vacations. So we were all hanging out. So, one of the first things I thought about was that when I thought about a solo vacation, I thought solitude. And it actually was the exact opposite of that. I was surrounded by all these other people who were really seeking that out. And in a way, it was even though we never knew each other and we never met, we just had such a great time because we were open to meeting whoever we were supposed to meet or going where we were supposed to go. And there was no agenda for the trip. It just all worked out so nicely.
Well, part of that is you're open to those experiences and you're defining how you're going to do them on your own terms.
That's
so
right.
If you wanted solitude,
Yep,
it was there for you.
That's right.
You just chose to engage. And if you didn't want to, you didn't have to.
And that's exactly right. There was one night that, it was raining and I was a little jet lagged and I just stayed in and slept and read a book. And I was so happy because I didn't have to feel guilty about that. I didn't have to explain to my partner or my friend that I didn't want to go out that night. I almost did a happy dance in my little room because it was I can do whatever I want and nobody can stop me. And so this idea, you're right, of being able to balance, the the alone time, the quiet time, to be able to just turn off was also really an important part of this trip. And I got the ability to do both in a way that felt like me without like trying to be some other version of myself.
Well, and you can really, when you take the time and the space for it, you can tap into that authenticity. And a lot of people start to talk about solo travel as selfish. And I'm like, can we redefine it as self-care?
That's exactly right. I am a huge proponent of self-care. And for me, this was exactly what that was about. It was, especially particularly over the holiday season when we're always buying things for other people and doing things for other people, or being around people that you just don't want to be around, right? So I made a point. I didn't buy Christmas presents this year. I bought a Christmas present for myself. And the fact that I was able to do that, particularly because I'm at a place in my life right now where I am single, I don't have children. I've always been seen as the family member. Oh, she can do it because she doesn't have kids, or she can do it because, she doesn't have a family. And so for the first time in a long time, I decided to stop putting so much into the world for other people and really carve out space for myself. Because to be honest, nobody else was thinking about me in that way, and they won't.
Absolutely. There is nothing wrong with putting yourself first.
That's right.
And, we talk to a lot of people, no matter what their relationship status is, when you have given to the point where you have nothing left, you have to take the time to fill yourself up.
That's exactly right. And what it reminded me of is that this experience will be a part of my life. It will be a part of my definition for self-care. And now, I'm thinking about where's the next place that I'm going to go by myself, because I no longer need anybody else's permission to make me happy. And quite frankly, I was in a really good relationship. And again, we traveled together. We went to beautiful places. But I just know that I was looking to him and that relationship to make me happy in a way that just wasn't going to come from anybody else,
Well, I think the healthy way of doing this, like you did, was with this particular mindset. Others might think of this as a running away type of thing. How would you differentiate that?
So I have been thinking even about this year-long journey as searching for my future self, getting to know my future self, getting to know myself better in a way where I'm already that person. It's already there. It's already in me. I just haven't met her yet, right? So it's not some, far away place. And so even thinking about my therapist has asked me as I start this year-long journey, what are you running from and what are you running to? And that's the sort of question that I have looming for me. And I see it as because I feel like my best self when I'm in an airport. I feel like my most authentic self when I'm on some kind of, trip or journey. That if I really want to get clear about who I really am, it's not going to be in my comfort zone. It's not going to be in my living room in Detroit. I've had some of the best ideas on the road. I've had some of my best thinking on the beach, right? So for me, I see it as changing my scenery to really just tap into those pieces that are already there. And I haven't found a way to do that in the same way when I'm at home, when I'm comfortable, when I'm cuddling with my dogs. I'm still inspired in many of the same ways, but there's just something that happens when I change my environment.
Additionally, you're going with a particular intention and purpose for yourself personally, as well as your business and things like that, which is a lot different than this idea of escaping.
Yep, that's right. That's right. I will say that I have been very purposeful about being intentional about everything in my life. And I couldn't say that I was doing that 5 years ago, right? I had a business 5 years ago, but I didn't spend much time thinking about how I wanted to spend my time or what my days looked like. And now that I know that this isn't for fancy rich people, right? I used to think that people who travel had something that I didn't have, or, that if you got to spend time on beaches that, you were really important. And I've just redefined my life as like, that's the kind of life I want to have. So for example, I was in Mexico last summer on vacation, and on the day that we were heading back, everybody was complaining about going back to work. And I started to ask myself, what if my life could look like my life on vacation? And what if instead of working 95% of my year for maybe a week-long vacation, what if I flipped that? And so I think this idea of solo vacation and even reimagining what a trip can look like, that, again, it doesn't have to look like the way that, you see it on TV, right? Between all these new apps and websites and, couch surfing, all these things are there for us in ways that didn't exist before. And we get to define that for ourselves.
Absolutely. And so the budget required for travel is really based more on our perceptions or expectations than what the reality is out there, for sure.
That's right.
Actually, a friend of mine just messaged me earlier this month, and she says, $450 to go round trip to Paris. Are you in?
Mm-hmm.
Now, it was a scheduling thing and I couldn't be in, but in general, those are things that, our dreams are right there for us if we're ready to grab them. But part of this process for many people is to take the time to evaluate what's holding them back.
That's right. That's right. And it's usually ourselves, right? That if we really get clear, it's not the friend that we're waiting for to get her money together. It's not the partner that we're waiting for, to clear their schedule. It's us. It's us thinking that it has to look a certain way, thinking that we've got to do certain things. And I think we just have to just be open to reimagining it. And I am living witness that you can have anything you want if you're willing to be open to what it looks like,
Absolutely. Absolutely. You actually were mentioning a book as we were talking before we started to record. Can you share that book with everybody, as that was part of your philosophy to get started for this year?
Now I'm trying to think of what the book was that I referenced.
It was about embracing the yes.
Oh, yes. Shonda Rhimes' Year of Yes. So I started a practice. So I'm a bookworm. I love to read. And I started a practice last year where I read a book a week. And it really was a challenge for me to stop watching as much TV, stop BSing with so much of my time. And actually just, it set my brain on fire for all the things that I could do if I really wanted to reimagine my life. And so this notion of the Year of Yes is she talked about how her friends and family would describe her as somebody who always said no to things, right? They'd ask her, hey, you want to come to Paris? And she'd say no, not because she had a scheduling conflict, but just because she said no. And she realized that she was saying no to more things than she was saying yes to. And so I tried to, see what that would look like for my own life, and knew that I was that person that always said no. So, on a Friday night, somebody would invite me out for drinks and I'd say nope, because I'm on my couch, right? Or I didn't always even have a reason for saying no, but because I'm a homebody and an introvert, I would naturally just gravitate towards that. And so for me, that Year of Yes was, taking the solo vacation. It was saying yes to myself by pursuing a business. It was also a way for me to step outside of my comfort zone and just sort of chase new opportunities. And, every invitation for a party, I would say yes to, so those kinds of things. It could be something small, it could be something large. But it really set a lot of these decisions in motion because I realized I was always saying no to things.
What's interesting is that often the thing that's limiting ourselves is us.
That's right.
And by having that challenge and committing to it, you've actually sort of forced yourself to give yourself permission to experiment and then see if you like it, see if you don't. But oftentimes when no is your first answer, you don't even think about the possibilities.
That's right. I think about, in a way, I'm 33 years old. I'll be 34 soon. That was keeping my life very boring. It was keeping my life very predictable. I knew what, on average, what a week would look like. And so what I knew is that when I imagined the life of my dreams, I was having fun. and I was enjoying myself. But I knew that that meant that I was going to have to do things that I never done before. So, for example, I never learned to swim. And on my 30th birthday, I bought myself swimming lessons. But then I would go to a beach and not get in the ocean, right? Like I was still not saying yes to experiences that I imagined in this dream life. So now I'm really challenging myself to do more of that. Like I'm going to learn to swim for real this year, right? Like, so what are the experiences you want to have? And you can't have those if you don't do the things that allow you to have them. So it's really changed the way I think about everything. And it's not perfect and I don't have it all figured out, but it's like these little tiny yeses that just add up to really great experiences.
Absolutely. So give us, for people who've never been to Aruba, what were a couple of the particular highlights from that destination for you?
So the island is really small, and I didn't realize that you could practically see the entire island in just a couple of days, which is not the case for most places you go to. Everything is surrounded by water, so the ocean is everywhere that you go. A couple of things that I would say is, and one thing that helps me was being with a local, because there were a lot of places, as you can imagine, where there were a lot of tourists. But I was able to go to beaches where there was nobody. And that actually was one of the highlights of my trip, to just be in places that were extremely quiet, And I think a lot of times you go to beachy places and there's all these people around and lots of commotion. And I didn't know that I would be able to get that from this experience, particularly from such a small place. The second thing that I would say was I really enjoyed just the people watching, right? I mean, so there's cruise ships coming in, you can see planes flying in above you. There's so many people from around the world. So I really love just listening to where people, where I thought people might be from. So really just kind of posting up somewhere and just like observing the environment. And then I would also say there's this other element of, and I'm challenging myself on this one as well, that we go to these foreign countries and we stay on the resort, or we stay in the places that are sort of safe. And so I really loved going into neighborhoods in Aruba because it reminded me of what I imagined Cuba to look like, or parts of Miami. It felt familiar and different at the same time. And oftentimes when I've gone to places, particularly for vacation, I never see the actual community. So I really, really enjoyed that.
That's awesome. And as you continue to seek out, other destinations, what are some of the things on your wish list in terms of places to go, or qualities in particular places?
So I absolutely have a list of bonus destinations for this year. So I've recently set a travel goal for myself to visit 100 countries in 5 years. And so my bucket list goal is to visit every continent, and to be able to, I want that in my obituary, right? Like I want that. I want to be able to say that when it's all said and done. And so so with the program Remote Year that I'm doing, originally it was going to be 20 countries, and they've pared it down to 12. So, but I still want to see some of those places. So Morocco, Egypt, South Africa are on my list for places to go. In terms of other places that are on the list, India, Amsterdam, Santorini, Greece is also on the list. And that one actually feels like one of the first next solo vacations, because there are some places that just because of the country or what's happening there, I may not necessarily be able to go by myself. But Santorini is a place that I have always dreamed about going to. And, I don't know where I'll be in my life at that point, but I don't want to wait to have to experience that with somebody. That's one that's really for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what was the biggest challenge for you while you were on the trip?
The biggest challenge was to live a little. So my word for the year is freedom. Nice. So I recently quit my job at the end of last year. My last day at work is next week. I'm launching my own business. So I really have been on this journey to get free and to live, to like really live my life. And it was a challenge because it's easy to sit in your room on a night that you're in Aruba and just do what you normally do, right? And so I really had to challenge myself that even though I was happy and content doing that I didn't come to Aruba to like lay down, So I stayed up later than I would normally stay up. I got drunk on New Year's Eve. I danced all night. And that's not my normal go-to place.
Mm-hmm.
But I kept reminding myself that like, nobody knows you here, right? There are no rules. There is nobody that's going to judge you, and do whatever makes you happy. And so New Year's Eve was the epitome of that because, I danced like nobody was watching all night. I danced with this little old lady, and even when I didn't know the dance, I'd still danced, I drank champagne all night and just enjoyed myself. And in a way where, I felt like, particularly because I've had a career in politics for so long. And, in the work that I do, you're always concerned about, image and, having to be careful of what you do and what you say when you're in public. And for the first time in a long time, I just didn't have to worry about that.
I love that. I can relate to that. Actually, as I was going through one of my first solo journeys, and it was a little bit more of running away from me at the time.
Mm.
I was on a beach in Jamaica, and I was the largest I had ever been. And I decided that because nobody was watching and because I needed to start differently on the journey, I wore a bikini on the beach.
That's right.
And I'm like, look, there are going to be large men in Speedos.
Yep.
And I can do this. But it was not about like who was watching. It was about what I needed to do to take care of me.
Yep. I'm so glad you said that because that was another element of this, that I wore a bikini on the beach and really started to ask myself, what would it look like to really love myself during this experience? Like you said, I think of the beach as an equal opportunity place. There are men who are wearing little tiny Speedos, and if they can do it with hairy backs, right? Like if they can do it, so can I.
Yes.
So I just think of it as that's the thing that unifies us, right? Like we didn't come to the beach to not enjoy it, but so many times I'd get a cover up, but then, be completely covered up and not experience it. So it was really liberating. And I bought a bikini that made me feel good. And even though I, at that point, had been my heaviest, I still looked and felt good in a bikini. So it is completely possible. And it's one of the best things I've ever bought because I didn't even know that was a thing, right? I didn't know that was possible.
I love it. So I want to ask one question before we get close to wrapping up. And this is, you're young, you are involved in a lot of things at home. How connected did you stay at home? Were you on Facebook? Were you messaging people? Or how detached did you get? And what was that part of your experience?
So for the first couple of days, I was very purposeful about getting off of Facebook and unplugging. And so I turned my phone off while I was there on airplane mode. And so I was able to still text some friends and family and that kind of stuff. But yeah, the first couple of days that I was there, I knew that if I was constantly posting on Facebook that I was not being present. And what I found is that, I actually had really good interactions with friends from there because I was not connected on Facebook. I sort of had the energy to just like talk to people in a different kind of way, and so they were even pushing me like, get out of your room, and so I should say, I had a 3 or 4 day trip there. And on the last day, my flight was delayed, which led to, I was going to miss my connecting flight. The airline put me up in a resort on the last day. So I got a bonus day in Aruba. And they were like, get out of your room. Like, don't, do not sit in your room tonight. And so by, the fact that I was able to connect with friends, it also like helped push me to just, they were like, you get a do-over, right? You get one more night to be here. How are you going to spend it? And I think had I just completely turned my phone off, I wouldn't have had that extra push. So I didn't really post until I got back. And I should say, actually, I did share that I got my bonus night. So that's one of the things that I posted on Facebook. And then I wrote a blog post about it and how the solo trip had been so transformative. So that really kind of came a couple days after I got back. But I would say, particularly if you are somebody who, is always tweeting or posting on Facebook, that we're missing the good stuff, and everywhere I looked, I'm just seeing everybody with their phones and, with selfie sticks and all these things. And so I spent more time with my head in a book than I did on my cell phone.
I'm with you on that. I think it's great that your friends were supportive of your experience, not just saying, okay, when are you coming home kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So they were, once this happened, they were actually engaged in you getting the full experience and enjoyment from it, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I find that if we're constantly on social media, we're worried more about what we're missing at home than we are about what we're missing in this destination that we've paid money and time for and really, for whatever reason, needed to be in.
So, as you said that, it made me think about during this time, I have a lot of friends who travel. So I'm seeing their New Year's Eve travels around the world. And it's making me think, oh, I wish I was in Bali, or I wish I was somewhere else, And so it comes back to this notion of just being present, right? Like, yes, Bali is on my list of places that I will go to someday, but my friends being there have nothing to do with where I am right now. And so, what I also will say is it does help in some sense to be connected, because there was a friend who happened to be in Aruba coming in the day that I was leaving, right? And so, it was great to see that there were other people coming there. But you're right, there's always this fear of missing out. And, what's happening at home, or what are other people doing, or what's happening with Donald Trump. And I just think that, it's time out for that. And that's the whole point of really being able to like unplug from the world and plug into ourselves.
Absolutely. Well, so I'd love for you to share a little bit about what you have coming up with this remote year experience, as well as what's going on with your business. It's always an opportunity, not just to plug it, but to encourage people to really check you out and get to know a little bit more about you.
Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, for the last almost a year, I've been on this quest to live my life like most people live on vacation, and knew that I wanted to travel. And it just so happened one day I saw a Facebook ad for a remote year, and it said, do you want to travel around the world and work remotely? And that really spoke to me. And so a week from today, I am moving to Kuala Lumpur. And I'll spend the next 12 months living in 12 different countries across Asia, Europe, and South America. And I also really had this dream of having a location-independent business that I could be running from anywhere. And so I travel the world training women, particularly women of color, to run for elected office. And so this remote year experience will allow me to do both. So I will be able to travel and have these once-in-a-lifetime kinds of experiences, and run a business that will allow me to sustain myself. And so because I got so many questions about the journey, I've created a free guide that is on my website. The address is www.rebeccamthompson.com/remote year. I'm sure that we'll include these in the show notes.
Yep.
But it includes all the countries that I'll be visiting, as well as a little guide that I put together that includes other programs, including Remote Year, that will allow other people to work remotely and travel the world as well.
And as I just went to that website, it looks like you can also subscribe to see what you have going on while you're traveling. So people can actually virtually experience Remote Year through your eyes, and maybe that will inspire or encourage them to apply to do it as well.
Absolutely. And I am happy to chat with anybody who is thinking about doing this for themselves, because I didn't know this was possible. And now I just want to share with everybody that they can do it too.
I love it. So if we want to close out with thinking about that woman who's listened to our conversation so far, and she's like, yeah, that worked for her, but I don't think I could do it. I'm too scared or stuck or whatever. What would you say to her?
There is a quote that has been guiding me for the past few weeks and months. And it's a quote by Oprah. And she says, there comes a point in time where you know that the place where you are isn't the place where you're supposed to be. And for me, that has been both literal, right, in terms of, vacations and trips and physical place, and also emotional and spiritual and just so much more. And so what I think about is it can look however it needs to for you, right? For some people, they may say, well, I don't have frequent flyer miles. A solo vacation could be a trip to the town next door, right? It doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to be big. It just, you have to know what it looks like and feels like and what you want to experience. And so what I would say is, this isn't using anybody else's template. And so I think first you've got to figure out what's the experience that you want to create for yourself. What's the purpose of this solo vacation? And what do you want to be doing? And so particularly for some people, depending on where they are, it might be in the mountains, it might be on the beach, like it can look however you want it to look like. And so I am not rich. I do not have a wealthy benefactor. I'm not just sitting on piles of money. And the only thing, stopping people from doing this is usually themselves. There's always a way.
I couldn't have said it better myself. It's often not about the budget. It's about us giving ourselves permission. It doesn't have to be grand, but I will also, in order for this to really have effect, I think what you were talking about of purpose is as important as where you go. It's the why, and it's the who you're intending to be or become or transform through the process.
That's right. I cannot tell you how comfortable in my skin I have gotten because I have been clear about the fact that this next year, this journey that I'm on is really to get closer to my future self. And I know what she looks like, and I know what she does, and I know I can feel her energy, right? And so because I have that really clear vision for where I'm going, there are a whole lot of details of it I don't know, but I just know I need to go in that direction. And so it's been, this starting my year with this solo vacation, for me, I said, it can only get better from here, right? This is a heck of a way to start a year, and it really sets the foundation. And so now I've decided I want to spend every new year in a different place, and I want to see what it feels like to do this around the world. And so you just got to set the intention, and I really do believe that when you put that out into the universe will rise up to meet you and will make it happen in ways that you probably couldn't have imagined.
I love it. Rebecca, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
I am so glad to be here. Thank you so much for chatting with me.
You bet. And best of luck on remote year. We'll put all of those links in the show notes so people can follow you on this fabulous journey you have ahead.
Thank you.
Wasn't it great to hear the stories that Rebecca shared with us today? It's important to remember that saying yes opens you up to possibilities. And sometimes we just have to give ourselves permission and jump in and say yes. Well, sisters, we've reached the end of today's episode, but the conversation doesn't have to end there. Go to www.transformviatravel.com to join the Go Solo Sisterhood Facebook community and share your thoughts. If you've liked what you've heard, please invite your friends to listen to Go Solo Live. Share it on Facebook. If you want to be a guest, reach out to me directly at jennifer@transformviatravel.com. Until next time, remember, you can go solo, not alone.